Hey everybody, this is Cromar with TGN, and I'm here to bring you another World of Warcraft Cataclysm video. This is the next DPS rundown for the patch on the PTRs currently, 4.0.6 I believe it is, and we're looking at some of the balance changes. We've already looked at the Assassination Rogue, or I'm sorry, excuse me, the Combat Rogue, which received a slight buff, but not a big deal. But now we're looking at the Retribution Paladin, who received a major overhaul, so this should be really exciting. Can't wait to see how this turns out. Now, I want to talk about what these changes are. The most important change is the change to Mastery. It's been completely redone, has the same name, but a completely different function. It now increases, or rather adds, an enormous amount of additional holy damage to those abilities you see in the list. Specifically, the most relevant ones, Templar's Verdict and Crusader Strike. And those are already your top two abilities, so this is obviously an amazing mastery now. You can just look at the numbers and just start drooling. So this is very, very good. It's good for PvE, which is what this video concerns, but it's also great for PvP. Ret Paladins are pretty terrible in PvP, so hopefully this should help a little bit by at least giving them some decent damage, since that holy damage does pass through armor. So that 41% is actually more than 41%, because it's also buffed by Inquisition. That's per a Blizzard Blue Post. I didn't bother to test it, because I just assumed that, that it works. So that's the major change. Now the old Hand of Light functionality, which was the free finishing moves, that's just what I'm going to call them now, Templar's Verdict and whatnot, abilities that use Holy Power, I'm just going to call them finishing moves because that's what they are. The one that gives you a free finishing move, oh, where is it here? It's been moved over into Divine Purpose. You remember this one used to have that list, it made that list of abilities just generate a free holy power occasionally, but that no longer does that. Now it's only a 15% chance to proc, and it procs the old Hand of Light proc. So if that's confusing, what it just means is that when you use those abilities, you get a free finishing move. So it's really, really simple. You just, you do your abilities. Can't reach my exorcism hotkey with the mic in front of my keyboard. That's why I clicked it. Swing for proc. There we go. So it procs Divine Purpose, and it makes your next Holy Power, your next finishing move, cost no Holy Power there. I just did a Templar's Verdict, and it didn't cost anything. So that's what that does. It gives you a buff, and you can use that buff, and it just gives you a free attack. So that's pretty amazing. It's a great talent now. The only downside is that the proc rate is very low, but that's how it was for the old Hand of Light also, so that's not a big deal. Also, the old functionality of Divine Purpose was not very useful at all. It didn't proc enough, and sometimes it could cause really awkward situations. Like when you would have Zealotry up, you'd use Templar's Verdict, and it would give you a free, useless Holy Power. Or you'd wind up at 2 Holy Power, use an ability, and it would give you a third, and then it would, you use Crusader Strike, and it'd give you a free, a 4th Holy Power that you couldn't use. That's kind of the same problem that rogues have, combat rogues have with their Glyph of Sinister Strike. It results in a lot of wasted holy power, so it was just very awkward. And now that that's gone, everything seems to fit into place. The rotation is just really cool and really kind of intuitive. Kind of reminds me of the Frost Mage in that you're just smashing a couple of buttons, but then a whole bunch of stuff procs all over the place. I need to like mentally process all the procs, and it keeps your mind active without relying on too many hotkeys. The only difference between this rotation and the Frost rotation is that Frost has a filler, which is Frostbolt, when there's nothing else going on, whereas this one you're just auto-attacking until your next ability comes up. Talent choices have not changed. Now you might notice that I still have Rebuke as a talent. This PTR build does not include the change. The change is that Rebuke is going to be replaced with a defensive talent called Sacred Shield, which is kind of similar to the old Sacred Shield, I think, but I'm not positive. And then Rebuke is going to be made a baseline ability. Fortunately, the fact that this change is not on the PTRs does not affect this test, because neither of those abilities are DPS abilities, so nothing changes. It's a change that will, however, impact PvP quite a bit, so I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be interesting with prop paladins having a Rebuke, though. I don't know what's going to happen with that. So for glyphs, the glyphs have made one major change from what you're seeing on live, which is that with the buffs to Crusader Strike via the new mastery, I've decided to go with the glyph of Crusader Strike over whatever my old third glyph was. I think it was Exorcism or something. I can't remember what it was now, but this is This is just a really powerful glyph now, because the fact that Crusader Strike is so much more powerful. There is one more change that, unfortunately, is not on the public test realm that is relevant, which is that Crusader Strike is supposed to be buffed from 115 to 135%. You notice the tooltip says 149. That's 115 times 1.3. And the 1.3 figure comes from this talent, which increases the damage of Crusader Strike by 30%. So that's what the tooltip confusion comes from. So it should be a much higher value after the patch goes in. So unfortunately, the damage that we're going to do here is going to be slightly lower than what you're going to expect to see on live when the Crusader Strike buff goes in. But either way, because the Crusader Strike is buffed twice, once by just increasing damage and two by Hand of Light, that it makes this crit on Crusader Strike very important and a very big part of your DPS. The other glyphs besides Prime don't matter, and the other two Prime glyphs are exactly the same. The obvious Templar's Verdict and Seal of Truth. Now, eventually, Seal of Truth, you know, if gear levels get really, really high, may eventually be taken off. Actually, in this gear, I actually had a hard time reforging my expertise down. So I may actually see, you know, in a tier or two, it might get kind of awkward. You might have to dump this glyph because you might have too much expertise. Kind of interesting. Now, fortunately, this parse I'm looking at here is just me messing around with some skills. It's not a real parse, but I just want to show you that the recount actually counts Hand of Light separately from your attacks, which makes it very, very easy to calculate how effective it is. And that's really nice, obviously. And it's able to do that because it's actually counted separately in your combat log. Now, I'm going to jump straight into the real DPS test. Unlike normal where I do more of a dry run. And let's go ahead and get started. And you do want to open with a Crusader Strike, of course. And Judgment and a Fart of War procs take advantage of that. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm not using my cooldowns immediately. I want to wait for Inquisition to be up first. Then I'm going to hit Avenging Wrath, and then hit my Hammer of Wrath. Because Hammer of Wrath is all buffed by Inquisition, of course. So you want to make sure you get as many hammers in during Inquisition as opposed to having to wait for it. After that, you know, you don't want to use Zealotry, by the way, until after Avenging Wrath's over, because while Zealotry's up, you pretty much never get a chance to use filler abilities, and it means your Hammer of Wrath goes unused, which sucks. So what you want to do is use your Avenging Wrath first. As soon as it runs out, use your Zealotry, and that'll give you a good 40 seconds, 40 to 45 seconds of a constant buff. Now, your rotation, you know, it's really unchanged though. If you've done Ret in Cataclysm, you know, you're not going to be too surprised by it. You still just want to maintain your Inquisition, like I mentioned, and manage your 3 cooldowns, and that's about it. Out of all your damaging abilities, you want to prioritize Templar's Verdict first, even over Hammer of Wrath. It does more damage than Hammer of Wrath, even, especially with the Hand of Light. The Hand of Light is what really seals the deal. Because once you take that huge amount of damage from from Templar's Verdict rather, and then factor in Hand of Light, which actually adds up about 50% more damage. I know the tooltip says a lot less, but you have to consider that it ignores armor and it's buffed by Inquisition, so it's quite a bit more. And let's take a look at these results. Now it actually finished at 13.3k DPS. That's when it finished, and then it ticked down to the dot. But 13.3 is our result with the Retribution Paladin. Did a little bit better than the Combat Rogue, about 1,000 DPS better, with no raid buffs besides Blessing of Might. And so anyway, the breakdown here, Hand of Light, as you see, gets its own entry, and it was phenomenal. Look at the damage range in that, by the way. 3k for a low-end Crusader Strike versus 23k for a huge Templar Verdict crit. And as we talked about before, Hand of Light is affected by crits from your Templar Verdict and your Crusader Strike. And you can see it right here if you had any doubts. That max 23,000 is clearly a proc off of this max 45,000. So yes, Hand of Light Mastery is incredible for Retribution Paladins now. If it doesn't get nerfed, I might be a little surprised. They might leave it in as it is just to allow Retribution Paladins to have a chance to actually be competitive at DPS. But I don't know. We'll see. Either way, this is a decently solid result with no buffs at all, with no raid buffs. It's managed to actually match the low end of live DPS. And that's pretty good. Now, of the other abilities, I was a little surprised to see Exorcism actually pass up Crusader Strike. That was kind of weird. You see the extra crit on Crusader Strike from this from the glyph, but I'm not too clear on that. That's a bit of a surprise. Hammer of Wrath, I was really surprised that it only counted 6 hits. I guess that's all I got, but I seem to remember getting a little more than that, but that's okay. So what's the final verdict for Retribution Paladins? Well, it's pretty exciting, actually. It flows together really well. It's not awkward at all. It's fun. It's engaging. And it's not super overcomplicated. It's a little complicated, but it's not super overcomplicated. It's like a better combo point system is what it is, and it's based around procs, and but it's not 100% based around procs. It's also got a lot of nice cooldowns to manage. It's actually pretty good. I'm real happy with it, and I can't wait to see what how the numbers play out in actual raids. Once we finally see that buff, that promised buff to Crusader Strike, it should increase this number by even more, by a few percents, and that will be a very good day for the Retribution Paladin. So I can't wait to see how these numbers actually play out in live raids. I think these are going to be a competitive DPSer, and definitely worth bringing to a group. Now, since they have not implemented Sacred Shield, I really don't have any idea how this is going to help their PvP. I know that the Hand of Light, just because of the fact that it's so powerful and the fact that it is holy damage and ignores armor, is very important for PvP. So I know that will definitely help, but defensively, I can't wait to see how that Sacred Shield pans out if we finally get to see it. Well, that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. This is Crowmar with TGN, asking you, as always, to please rate, please comment, please subscribe.